Welcome to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. It's the 19th of September 2021 and I'm Sean Aylmer. This is our Sunday show where we have a bit of a change of pace and we look at some of our favourite stories from the week. As always, I'm joined by the Fear and Greed team. Adamski Lang, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Mickey T, Michael Thompson, good morning.
Hello, Sean.
I want to get in there and have a gripe before Michael does.
Oh, that'll be a challenge.
What has happened to the language in this country? Why does everyone start talking about leaning in on things? Why do people say agile all the time? You know, look through. Why
Nuanced.
are we pivoting now? Nuanced. Can't they just use English? I mean, it's like consultant speak taking over.
I don't have a problem with some of them. And again, I know this is just setting me up for you to abuse me over this, but
Yes.
there are some terms that I think are actually fairly useful. I mean, how else are you going to say pivot without using about 10?
Change.
Flexible.
Change direction.
Yeah, 2 words compared to 1. It's all about efficiency.
What about lean in? I'm leaning into that. What do you mean you're leaning into it?
Okay, that is a bit silly.
How about ideate? There's another one. Let's ideate this. Ideate?
Terrible.
I don't reckon that was a word 5 years ago.
No,
I don't think it still is.
Do you ever use touch base and checking in?
Not really. Although occasionally I find myself, it's a journey. And
dear.
I cringe. Now, the Kook, Stephen Koukoulis, our resident economist, uses all the time because he's an economist. We look through the data. And what it means is basically we ignore the data because we think that it's not true. And that happened over the last week with the unemployment numbers. No one actually believed the unemployment rate was 4.5%. So we look through the data to the next thing. So what do you mean you look through? You can't actually look through data. It just doesn't make sense. You ignore it.
Sean, is that where the trend becomes your friend?
The trend becomes your friend. Nicely said.
Thank you.
An economics graduate there, through and through.
Can I share with you very briefly then a review that we've had this week because it fits very neatly into what you are talking about right now. This review came from a listener, Will, who said, I like the new Sunday format, but there was a point last week where it sounded like 3 old guys getting angry at things, which is not entirely fair because I'm not old, but
I'm kind of flattered.
But the rest of it's not bad. I mean, Will, you're kind of on the money.
it's fairly appropriate.
Let's get on to something then. Submarines, Adam. I know you love the fact that Australia came out this week and dumped a $90 billion contract with France and picked up one up to buy 8 nuclear subs from the US and UK. What do you reckon of that one?
Oh, it was just such a big week of news, and that was amongst it. Now, you both know that I have an allergy to acronyms, so AUKUS. Now, that's a terrible one for me. That is about Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America announcing a pact for, quote, an enhanced trilateral security partnership to gain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific over the long term, end of quote. So the first AUKUS initiative is to deliver 8 nuclear-powered subs to be built in Adelaide by 2040. So these things take a long time to build. We'll now need to cancel a $90 billion deal with the French. That's with 12 submarines. And understandably, we've annoyed the French and we'll have to pay compensation for that. Also, unsurprisingly, we've drawn criticism from China. But at the same time, as you, Sean, reported on Friday, Beijing applied to be part of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's another hellish acronym, CPATPP. If that happens, it may improve our trading relationship with China. So we've got China annoyed on one hand and seeking trade on the other. Now, I don't really believe in coincidences, but Sean, how are you seeing this?
Well, I love the fact that the French said we were just poodles of the US. That was one of the highlights of that particular story.
That was pretty good.
Second was watching everyone trying the acronym AUKUS, people trying to say it as a word.
AUKUS.
Is it AUKUS?
Is awkward.
So that was, the AUKUS is very awkward. So I quite enjoyed that part of it. I've got to say, I'm a bit worried about ScoMo and his push towards the US and UK. We have been friends and allies for many, many years. But really, for the last 30 years, and definitely for the next 30 years, our future is in Asia and relies on Asian economies. And China is the biggest Asian economy, and I just think it's pretty provocative. And I don't know why we really need to do it right now when we're at loggerheads with the world's second largest economy, which will be the world's largest economy by the end of the decade. That's what I'm worried about. Michael?
To me, it does make sense to try and strengthen our oldest relationships, because China does seem like a country that only responds to force and a display of strength, which is what this was. And yes, I agree, it's very provocative. But does it then exclude us from working with other Asian economies like Japan and India? It doesn't. So therefore, I don't actually see it necessarily as a bad thing. And if it shows China that we are not a country that can be easily pushed around, then maybe that is something that could end up being respected.
Oh, Michael.
I'm an idealist.
Look, where's our future? Indonesia's our future. India's our future. China's our future. Japan, South Korea. Now, we've done deals in the last week with India, South Korea and Japan because we had our defence minister and our foreign minister visit some of those countries. We are close to them, but this total emphasis on the United States and the United Kingdom, who are so far away, it just frustrates me because our future, Indonesia is actually our future. Mammoth population, 300 million people, developing, urbanising. We want to sell commodities, sell them to Indonesia. India, exactly the same. They've announced an infrastructure plan which absolutely dwarfs the US infrastructure plan, which they want to roll out over the next 10 years. Let's go suck up to India, fellas. That's what I say.
Well, question to you both. Did either of you know that a submarine was worth around $7.5 billion?
Last time I bought one.
That's why you should always buy secondhand.
Gotcha.
Actually, where you're wrong there, though, it was a $90 billion for 12 submarines, and now we're paying $80 billion for 8. Not sure about the maths there. Hey, talking about big numbers, Canva, how about those guys? Melanie Perkins and Cliff Obrecht.
Yeah, this was probably my favourite story of the week because they are just such phenomenal numbers. So Canva completed a funding round this week, a graphic design company now valued at $55 billion, which is just phenomenal considering 10 years ago it didn't even exist. Two of the founders are now married. They weren't married when they started the company. Melanie Perkins and Cliff Obrecht, in their 30s. But what's so impressive?
Oh, hold on. They're so good looking and they're so rich and they're so nice. You know those people that just got everything going for them?
Yeah.
Drives you mad.
I'm trying to suppress the jealousy.
I mean, have they had the time to sit down and watch Schitt's Creek though? That's what I want to know, right? Have they had the normal day-to-day living of being in lockdown and having to look at each other nonstop for weeks and weeks on end? Maybe they have actually.
They're based in Sydney, so they probably have, but they're probably doing it across an enormous mansion, and so it's probably okay. You can probably live with that.
I bet they're getting takeaway every night.
Which is, of course, as we know, the ultimate sign of wealth.
Totally.
That they have an Uber Eats tab.
Yes, I'm not just talking the local Thai.
It is pretty impressive, though, that they have pledged to give away their 30% stake in the company to a foundation. So it's valued at around $16 billion. And I think Cliff probably summed it up best when he said that they want to use their money to do good and make the world a better place and not just, and I quote, hoard shit, which is a very kind of 30-something-year-old way of kind of describing the accumulation of wealth. 2 points here for me. Airtree Ventures is one of the main early investors in Canva. Airtree was founded by Daniel Petrie, who's very vocal about the need for philanthropy. He's been on Fear and Greed before speaking about it. I wonder whether there's a little bit of his influence coming through here. And Sean, I suppose a question for you. We're in the middle of a bit of a tech startup boom in Australia. Does this put all the other startups, the ones who are hoping to kind of replicate the success of Canva, on notice that philanthropy should really kind of be part of what we do now?
It's a fair point. It's a really good point. I would like to think that. The great success stories at Atlassian, now I don't know how philanthropic those two, Scott Farquhar and Mike Cannon-Brooks, are, but yeah, I mean, it would be nice to think that the fact that Canva has come out and so publicly said it. Of course, there's a big difference between publicly saying it and actually doing it. But yeah, it's a really good point. Wouldn't it be nice if these people who have become so rich end up giving away a lot of money?
And I think the other good thing about it is that they're actually going to do it through a foundation that is actually run through Canva. They're not setting it up as a personal foundation. They actually want it to be part of what Canva does. So trying to actually thread philanthropy through the entire company. And Adam, that would have to be good for the culture of an organisation to really make it part of what they do and what they stand for.
I think these guys are brilliant. I think they've attained something that very few do, and that is the startup unicorn status. They're well past $1 billion, so well done to them. I think culturally, you're right, Michael. It's a brilliant idea. And look, if they're looking for other startup investments, can I suggest that Fear and Greed is a worthy vehicle for them to consider their philanthropic and business investment ideas?
Melanie, Cliff, I'm sure you're listening. Think about us.
What's the opposite then of a unicorn? If a unicorn, it's a mythical creature, so it's more of a goblin or a troll, is it?
Probably a dog, like a real creature. It's just a dog.
Sasquatch.
Yeah. Hey, talking about rich people, James Packer also came up in the news this week. He's selling his boat for $208 million. Now, he took a long time to build this boat. IJE, it's called, which is the name, the three initials of the names of his three kids, Indigo, Jackson and Emmanuel. I mean, maybe there's a bit of a cash crunch here because he hasn't received a dividend from Crown Casino for a long time. Just interesting when you see the lives. I mean, this week we found Shamara Wickramanayaka from Macquarie Group was paid $16 million. The bosses of CSL, Mirvac, Woolworths, they all ended up with big pay increases this week as a result of record profits last year. What do you do when you have so much money? I started with James Packer. He probably hasn't got as much money as he had, but he's worth $6 billion. We've got Melanie Perkins and Cliff Obrecht combined worth $16 billion. You've got all these CEOs with so much money. What do you do with the wealth? Adam, if you were that rich, what would you do with it?
Sean, I hope we and every single listener today finds out that problem, the answer to that problem. But, it's like when you fantasize as a child about winning the lottery and what will you do with it?
Hang on, like, as a child, I've been very vocal on this topic that I still do.
I haven't stopped fantasizing.
That's right.
But I don't ever seem to have a problem coming up with ways to spend the money. So, yeah, I've got an endless list.
Would you buy a new iPhone?
I probably would. But I've still got a few months left on my contract. So, I'm sort of utilitarian enough to hold out until that's done and then look at the next option. And I might not even buy an iPhone. I might look at a different
no, you have
vehicle.
to buy an iPhone because the tech heads this week were incredibly excited because Apple came out and every year they have their launch. It's sort of beyond me. I mean, I give full credit to Apple to be able to continually reinvent themselves every year such that people want to buy their latest iPhone. Now, this year they came out with 4 new iPhone 13s and there was a new iPad, a new mini iPad, a new Apple Watch. And it just amazes me that they have this ability to market themselves such that it's like a new pair of sneakers. It's just 10 times more expensive. You must have the latest one. What do you think, Michael?
It is pretty impressive, and it feels like a bit of a, I don't want to say cult, that once you are in with Apple, everything is then linked. Your computer, your phone, your watch, all of those things. So it makes it very hard to actually get out. I watched the announcement about the new iPhone, and I'm not due for a new phone until next year. Like Adam, I'm kind of sticking to the contract that I've got, and I dared float the idea this week to my wife of, hey, maybe we should look at those new Samsung phones, the ones that bend. And if looks could kill, you two would be doing this as a duo because there is no way I suspect that we will ever be leaving Apple. We are firmly within the grips of the Apple cult now. But I'm a fan. I wouldn't be one of those people lining up at the Apple store to buy one on the day of release, but you know what you're getting with it. They are quality products.
Okay, now change your pace here, Adam. In the midst of my blackout during the week, you chatted to Gareth Aird, the head of Australian economics at Commonwealth Bank. He had some really interesting stuff to say about savings.
Yeah, I always really enjoy listening to Gareth, and there's two reasons. He's an expert, but also the Commonwealth Bank has such great access to a huge amount of data across their customer base. And he mentioned that they had high-frequency internal data related to household incomes and COVID-19 support payments. Now, in and of itself, that's not entirely surprising, but him looking into it found that the government lockdown payments have actually been more than the lost wages and salaries at an aggregate level in New South Wales and Victoria. So he estimated that the average bank account at Commonwealth Bank now has around $10,000 more than pre-COVID.
Wow.
And his view is that the Commonwealth Bank that data is supported by the national accounts of savings in the economy. And depending on how lockdowns are eased across the country, we can look forward to a really solid bounce back in spending. I was blown away by that. What did you think, Sean?
Yeah, I thought it was an amazing number, and it just shows the wealth of data that the big banks have, and Commonwealth Bank is the biggest of the big banks. And it's really positive for the economic outlook when there's so much money there waiting to be spent when the lockdowns ease.
It could be a brilliant Christmas. Michael, how did you see it?
Well, I was curious because I went and checked my bank balance after that. Like, wait a second. You haven't been looking at my bank.
What millennials are you talking about?
Yeah, indeed. But then I thought, look, you know what? It probably is right. No one's going out for dinner. No one's going out and spending any money. So, look, who am I to question the research of Australia's largest bank? I'll say, okay, probably right.
Now, just on that, you mentioned going out and spending the money. Myer this week also came out, and what I thought was it had its best result in 5 years, and Myer share price is up 90% in the last few months, right? It's an incredible turnaround, though it still needs to prove that it can make it. What I thought was really interesting was that the boss of it said that they're stocking up now because they think everyone will be shopping now, so it's September, October, rather than waiting till November and December, simply because the supply chains are so difficult. People won't trust the fact that they can get products to them, and particularly if they're buying online, they'll want to get it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't remember the last time I set foot in a Myer store in person. Lockdowns aside, no one shops in store anymore. It is all online from Myer. And
oh, hold on, don't we?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting about the generation gap.
Whack.
I think I look quite stylish in one of those suits.
But the fact is, whenever you buy anything online now, you need to factor in the incredible amount of time that it takes to be delivered. And I'm not pointing the finger directly at Australia Post, but it's certainly in that kind of vicinity that it can be very, very, very slow. So I would believe that people will be shopping a lot earlier this year in order to actually make sure you get it, because what normally would have taken 3 or 4 days can take kind of 2 weeks.
Now, Michael, I'm going to keep with you because you were very excited this week when you found out that a real estate agent was fined $10,000 for underquoting on a house. The house was sold for $5.8 million, and they had suggested it would go for the high threes. This was a place in Armidale in Melbourne. Anyway, they ended up in court and $10,000 fine as a result.
Yeah, I'm a bit obsessed with property. I think probably like a lot of people, I spend quite a bit of time on the Domain app and on the realestate.com app. I'm happily mortgaged up, so I'm not actually looking to buy, but I will keep looking to see what's happening. So that story did grab me this week. There were a couple of bits of news around the property market that kind of jumped into the headlines. House prices having risen by 6.7% in the June quarter, the largest jump, I think it was, since records began in 2003. ANZ Chief Executive Shane Elliott through the week saying that housing is causing a social divide between owners and renters. And that all, of course, comes down to affordability. And then, Sean, as you mentioned, the best story of all, which is that real estate agent being fined for underquoting. I have some sympathy for real estate agents, and I know that's a very odd thing to say, but because prices are rising so quickly, and it seems so unpredictable at the moment that a guide kind of given at the start of a campaign could well be out of date by a long way by the end of the campaign. But this underquoting example is a very different story altogether. Adam, are you with me? Do you have any sympathy for real estate agents in the current climate?
I do, but I just don't think that $10,000 is actually a penalty. I mean, if you look at their commission versus the $2 million they got it wrong by, they make more money to cover the fine. So there's no real disincentive. And look, I guess like many of us, I treat it as a bit of a spectator sport. If there's something in the neighbourhood outside of lockdown, I'd normally go looking. And I'm always interested in how it goes. And to me, it is just so rare across many years that they get it right. There almost always seems to be guidance given, carefully worded. The market is telling us this.
Yep.
And then that just keeps creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And I just don't believe that that is sincere.
Yeah, underquoting is one of those things that everyone who's buying a house feels like they're being underquoted afterwards, but it just seems to be such a hard thing to prove. So that's why this example through the week is such an interesting one. But Sean, I'd be keen to hear what you think about then Shane Elliott's comments on the social divide between renters and owners, that it's all about affordability.
Yeah, what's interesting is that a CEO of a major bank said it. Shane Elliott is the longest serving CEO among the major banks now. He lives in Melbourne, where house prices have gone through the roof. He is a pretty sensible, a pretty sober individual. And I think the fact that he said it is really important. Everyone knows it, and I'm sure he's known it for a long, long time. But the banks obviously want to do something about it. And it's no good for the banks if people can't afford to buy a house in the long run. It's great that prices are going up and they're lending more money. But in the long run, they want, as one generation dies off, they need the next generation to be buying homes. So I did think it was really worthy that he came out and said it. Now, Adamski.
Yeah, Sean.
I reckon we've almost got to the end of this. And Mickey T hasn't had a fair dinkum gripe yet.
Oh. And
I think we could end now and that'd be fine. But as Will said earlier on, just a bunch of old blokes complaining, it would be fair that we get this may not work, but I'm going to have a go. So tell me, Mickey, what about companies with unusual names, particularly when they mislead the reader?
Okay, this is actually a little bit of a gripe that I've had for some time, and
here we go.
It's been bothering me for a little while.
Really?
If you're going
Sounds
to name
like
a
the
company,
horse is rearing here.
Yeah, I believe so.
If you're going to name a company, why wouldn't you actually tell people what you do in the name of your company? It just makes more sense. The one that really, really irritates me, right, is the company Silver Lake Resources, which is a gold miner. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And so every time I see that in the ASX 200, I'll be flicking through, I'm like, oh, that's a gold miner. Should have been called Gold Road Resources or something like that.
Yes.
It's a bit. It's a minor gripe, but it's one I will be coming back to.
Well, what I find as a podcaster, it's the opposite. We're like nickel mines. So you go nickel producer, nickel mines. So I'm using the word nickel twice in 3 words, which of course is a total sin when you're podcasting. So I'm almost the opposite. I like the idea that I can say Gold Digger Silver Lake Resources as opposed to nickel miner, nickel mines. So I'm not totally with you. Mind you, does Woolworths say that it's a shopper? Does Wesfarmers say they've got Bunnings, Officeworks, chemicals, all that sort of thing?
See, this is entirely unfair that you're expecting my gripe to actually stand up to questioning.
Right.
Or to any kind of reasoning here. Yeah. That's why it's just a gripe, and then you move on quickly.
Well, let's leave it at that. I hope you both enjoy your day. Adam, have you got anything on today?
Oh, magnificent Sunday ahead with the family, Sean. I'm going to cherish it.
What about you, Michael?
I have big plans to reactivate my Apple TV subscription because the second season of Morning Wars has started.
Oh, it has.
And I have to watch it because the season 1 finished on such a cliffhanger. This is the one with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon and Steve Carell. But that would be my recommendation for anyone who's wondering what to do on a lazy Sunday.
Well, I'm going to be outside because it's a beautiful day. That's it for this morning, Sunday, the 19th of September, 2021. Michael, Adam, thank you for being part of it.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
I'll be back tomorrow morning with the regular edition of Fear and Greed. Enjoy your Sunday.